What you need to know about the ban on Cuba cruises. But thanks to a major tightening of U.S. government travel restrictions to the Caribbean island and went into effect a day later, that boom cycle has officially gone bust, much to the dismay of aspiring American cruisers. Without warning, all cruise line members are forced to eliminate all Cuba destinations from all itineraries effective immediately. This affects why was the ban implemented? It all comes down to politics. In a U.S. White House National Security Advisor John Bolton praised the new rule as ending veiled tourism to Cuba on Tuesday. Cuban Minister of Will any Cuba cruises still be permitted to sail? The rise of Cuba cruising was largely owed to the now defunct people-to-people license, granted for travel to the country for purposes of education and cultural exchange. A fresh repeal of Carnival Corporation parent company to 3 cruise lines with sailings scheduled to Cuba, including Carnival Cruise Line, Holland America Line, and Seabourn. The latter was poised to debut Cuba cruises in November. Announced on June 5 that the company was ending all calls to Cuba, effective immediately. Norwegian Cruise Carnival spokesman Roger Frizzell lamented the circumstance, telling AFR by email, "Cuba was an exciting place for our guests to visit, so we are disappointed that we can no longer offer this as an option. We are disappointed that cruises will no longer be operating to Cuba," echoed CLIA chairman Adam Goldstein, in a statement. While out of our control, Popper added, "What's unclear in all this is whether or not some of these smaller cruise ships might be able to apply for specific licenses, referring to federally authorized exemption permits that might still permit sailing there. However, what happens if I am already booked on a Cuba-inclusive cruise?" With little in the way of a grace period for cruise lines to come up with alternatives, companies are still scrambling to process and adapt to the full implications of the policy change. The short answer is that it's likely going to vary from line to line, explained Erica Silverstein, senior editor at Cruise Review and community-focused website. Cruise lines are Virgin Voyages said in a statement that the beauty of sea travel means that we have the flexibility to take our ships to many wonderful destinations, adding it would announce adjusted voyages featuring a new destination early next week. For affected 2019 sailings, Royal Caribbean said it has secured to be announced alternative ports. It is allowing guests, Silverstein said. Compensation will likely vary from cruise line to cruise line. To date, details are still hazy on what ports cruises will swap out for those in Cuba. Said Silverstein, "Beyond cruising, how else can I travel to Cuba?" Cruising had been the most, and many organized group tours by land had also relied on the now defunct people-to-people license to bring travelers to the Caribbean island. For qualified, the good news is of the 12 categories of permissible travel, 11 of them remain intact, said Popper. Of other, which include things like family travel, travel for professional research and meetings, and travel that provides support for the Cuban people. So there still are. He explained that the support for the Cuban people trips are poised to be the next category the travel sector embraces. These types of trips. For 4 presidents we've seen regulation change after regulation change and we've always adapted, Popper said. We look at this as the
raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot. I get fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park.